My subject matter, the topic on which I handed over my paper to this symposium is the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. My focus was on Article 14 of this convention. It speaks about the rights, minimum rights guaranteed at a criminal trial of an accused person. So the intention, the motive of this paper was to compare with the provisions available in the military justice system of Sri Lanka to prove that all these guarantees stipulated in the Article 14 of the ICCPR have been included in our military justice system, so that all these rights have been guaranteed. So before doing this comparison, I think it is of paramount importance to speak something about the military justice system, because when you say I am comparing this with the court martials, when we hear the word court martials, it is not a common court. So others, what they get is various misconceptions, because when you say courts martials, you get the idea of sometimes a military court, military tribunal, military commissions, or sometimes martial law, things like that come to your mind. But practically what happens is before a military court also the same thing what happens in the civil justice system. Somebody who joins the army does not lose his identity as a citizen of that country. So he remains as a citizen of the country, and therefore when he joins the army, he doesn't lose all the rights that are entitled to him as a citizen of the country. So on that basis, I will have to explain certain things like the relationship between the justice and the discipline, and the military justice and the discipline, and human rights, national security. Otherwise, just comparison of these two things, I will not have, I don't think I will be able to convey something to you, because that is very important. This justice, military justice and discipline go together. Therefore, let me explain certain things to you in respect of this matter. So these are the rights that have been included in Article 14 of the ICCPR in respect of an accused who has been charged before a criminal court. So all these things are known to lawyers, even if they don't know, even if they are not aware that these things have been included in the military justice system. They well aware for a person who has been charged under civil law, they are ensured of these rights. To be informed promptly of the charge against him, he has to be informed of his charge. He should be afforded adequate time for preparation of defense, to be tried without undue delay, to be tried in his presence. Defend himself in person or through legal assistance, right to cross-examination witnesses against him, free assistance of an interpreter, not to be completed to testify against himself or to confess guilt. Now, I will explain to you certain matters in respect of the military law, military justice system. Why do you have a military in a country? It is to promote justice, to assist maintaining good order and discipline, to promote efficiency and effectiveness in military. Thereby, ultimate goal is strengthening the national security of the nation. So without discussing these matters, our just discussing other things, I don't think will justify my topic. So as I initially spoke to you, discipline is a very important factor in the military. So this is what one General Marshal Maurice Sachs has told in 18th century, mentioned about discipline. After organizing troops, discipline is the first matter that presents itself. It is the soul of the army. It is not established. If it is not established with wisdom and maintained with unshakable resolution, you will have no soldiers. So that shows how important the discipline in an army. So nothing could be more dangerous to a public peace and safety than a licentious and indisciplined army. So to achieve the ultimate goal of justice, the military has to go with discipline also. So this is the difference between civil military law system and in the army criminal law system. So the use of military force can never be left uncontrolled. Undisciplined forces may cause to constitute a danger not only to themselves but to the others. As Rowe notes, the need for discipline is especially prominent during multinational operations. I will give you a good example. This is what happened to general who led the forces in Afghanistan war. He made certain remarks about Joe Biden, the vice president of USA, and on that issue he was called before the president, the commander-in-chief, and now you can see the difference. We speak of human rights, that is a human right to express, but military people, they are under restrictions. In anywhere in the military justice systems in the world, it is so. Even Sri Lanka, human rights are guaranteed in the constitution, but there are restrictions to the members of the military forces. It is the same in any military jurisdiction in the world. So this is what happened to this general. He was called before him, and you can see he had to apologize, and at last what comes for his resignation, it is the discipline and the national security. This is what he said before the nation. I extended my sincerest apology for the profile. It was a mistake, reflecting poor judgment, and should never have happened. Throughout my career, I have lived by principles of personal honor and professional integrity. What is reflected in this article falls far short of that standard. I have enormous respect and admiration for the President Obama and his national security team that speaks about their national security of the nation, and for the civilian leaders and troops fighting this war, and I remain committed to ensuring its successful outcome. The Commander-in-Chief, the President of USA, put it to the same cause, the safety of the country. Today I accepted General Stanley McChrystal's resignation as commander of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan. I did so with considerable regret, but also with certainty that it is the right thing for our mission in Afghanistan, for our military and our country, in the name of their national security, premise which no nation can survive. So it is very paramount importance when we speak about military justice system. The national security and discipline inseparable. Military power, then when we speak of military courts, you may think it is a peculiar type of a court. Where does it come from? It doesn't come from the heaven. It comes from the same source which other courts come. I will, for that purpose, give introduction about our military justice system, where it comes from. This is same in every jurisdiction in the world, every military jurisdiction in the world. Members of the military voluntarily subscribe their oath to support and defend the Constitution. So when a person joins the military, they give a certain oath to their nation. It says they undertake to serve the country to the best of his ability, to uphold and defend the country and the Constitution. And accordingly, if you violate, it is the last thing that you should do. And this is what in 1963 Admiral Eileen Burke, US Navy, Washington, spoke about a person who committed an offense, was court-martialed. There he remarked, when an officer swears to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, he is assuming the most formidable obligation he will ever encounter in his life. Thousands upon thousands of men and women died to preserve for him the opportunity to take such an oath. What he is actually doing is pledging his means, his talents, his very life to his country. This is an obligation that falls to relatively few men, and it should be considered as a sacred trust. This is the ultimate of any military member in any part of the world. So how does it come? Sovereignty, it comes through the sovereignty even under our military justice system. It comes from the Constitution. So sovereignty is in the people and it is inalienable. Sovereignty of the people exercised through legislative power, executive power and judicial power. This is executive power.